Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your host, your brother, and your friend, Rashid. I'd like to thank each and every one of you for giving me your time today, especially seeing that this was a spur-of-the-moment shot. So we're going to try to talk about some of these headlines, all right? I'd like to thank you seriously for the time that you're spending with me, because you didn't have to do this, you don't have to do this, and yet you're still doing it. And before we go into the news, I also want to update some people who inquired about this. We are filing motions. I think it's my son knows. I think it's the SEC or something like that against YouTube, and we'll tell you why. They continue to suppress my numbers at an alarming rate. I know this won't go anywhere, but we want a paper trail. They continue to take my subscribers away from me constantly, which is amazing, because even with the suppression of the numbers, and they kept me at 4,000, almost 4,100. Today I looked at my subscribership is 3,997. It's going in reverse. More views, more everything, but that's going in reverse. So we'll be filing a complaint with YouTube first, and then after that we'll take it to the next step. So I just want to let you know that's what's going on. I want to thank everybody that's joining me on Rumble, Odyssey, the Red Pill Journals, the Red Pill Diaries, Twitter, and that were just joining me on Locals until the link just got clipped. So I just thank each and every one of you. Now let's go into the news, okay? Now, I want to talk to you all about, it's amazing how when I talk about certain things, it finally makes the news. And I was just talking to you all, even as they were trying to suppress my show the other morning, when we were talking about Armenia. And it's amazing how now Armenia is in the forefront of this stuff. And I was telling you about what Russia should do, because it's a national security threat for Russia to allow Armenia to realign itself with the West. And I said that America has no problems overthrowing governments, and I'm not advocating the overthrow of government. America has no qualms, and NATO has no qualms with ignoring the will of the people and real democracy when it suits them. They trumpet democracy, but when democracy is not in their favor, they have no second thoughts about overthrowing the government and installing their people. And I continue to tell you that Russia continues to talk this language that nobody in the West understands. And if they continue to talk this dialogue, they will wind up the losers. They have to learn and then speak the language of empire to the empire, because that's the only language that the empire knows. To give you an example of what I'm talking about, I have been advocating for 2 years, since this conflict started. Go back, the track record is there on video. I was saying as America continued to ignore Russia's security interests and telling the United States, listen, you have to reposition NATO, get them off of my border, stop them from coming up to me, because it's a security threat to me. What Russia should do is go to Cuba. Haven't I been saying that? What is Russia doing now? 2 years later, after I've been saying it, Russia is going to Cuba. But here's the weak point in this. Even though Russia is doing this as a demonstration of strength, there should be some tangible behind it. Instead of sending a nuclear powered submarine, I don't know if it's a frigate or a destroyer, and a tugboat and something else, they should have sent an armada there. I'm talking about comprising of about 10 ships, maybe 2 submarines, along with the 10 ships. And as the war games, or the simulated war games, ended and Russian ships leave Cuba, they should have left behind at least 1 submarine and 4 or 5 warships. This would have been a strong demonstration of, as thou hast done, so shall it be done unto thee. You no longer have the exclusive right to have war games on everybody else's border. You no longer have the exclusive right to trespass other people's waters and bring about warships and deadly weapons close to the shores of other people. This is the only language that the empire in the West understands. If you speak any other language, they will ignore you. And guess what? When Russia spoke this language, by sending that small flotilla to Cuba, guess what happens? An article pops up. See, I'm telling you, I know when I'm talking to you, it may be like right there in your face, like, and you're like, whoa. But what I'm saying is true. Forget the delivery. Listen to the message. And the message is a life or death message. And it is critical for the national security of Russia or for any other nation that faces the threat of the empire. This is not exclusively for Russia. This is just talking about Russia because Russia is fighting a war against NATO and the US. So listen, right after Russia sends the flotilla, an article comes up, right? And this article comes up today, June 13th, on Russia Today. And the title and the headline of the article is NATO top job favorite says dialogue needed with Russia. Now, hold on right there. How is that connected to the warships in Cuba? As long as Russia was speaking international law, and as long as Russia kept her ships in the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and the surrounding waters like the Barren Straits and all of these other waterways, it wasn't a direct threat to the U.S. But as soon as Russia sends a flotilla to Cuba, which lies some 103, 105 miles, something like 95 to 105 miles off the coast of Florida. And when Russia's warships traverse the waters in between Cuba and the state of Florida, coming some 25 miles off the coast of Florida, which is in international waters, I might add, because Florida's water, coastal waters extend 12 miles. Russia skirted that as if NATO and Russia and the United States does. So as soon as that happens, then article comes out, NATO top job favorite says dialogue needed with Russia. Well, what happened to the few weeks and months ago when they were saying that there's no need for dialogue with Russia? Oh, we can't sit down and talk with Russia because Russia is an irresponsible, belligerent power. We cannot talk with Russia because it is run by a dictator. All of a sudden, when Russia says, I'm going to do a tit for tat, now you want to put in the news NATO's top job favorite. The guy doesn't have the job yet, but they put that in there for a reason. To say this, to convey to anybody, hey, this guy might get the top job of the world's largest and greatest terrorist organization ever. And he is advocating talking to Russia. You didn't want to talk to Russia when you thought you were winning. You didn't want to talk to Russia when you thought you had the military advantage. You didn't want to talk to Russia when you were imposing sanctions on Russia. Why all of a sudden the turnaround? Something had to happen that shook the heads of the people for them to even publish this article here about somebody who is aspiring to the top job of the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization and wanting to have dialogue with Russia after all of the West saying that there was no need for any dialogue with Russia. Something happened. And when we look at when we survey the whole lay of the land, we can say the one major thing that was done different by Russia is them sending a flotilla to Cuba. Is that not right? And when we look at that, why? Because it touched home on the United States. As long as Russia threatens Europe, when Europe continues to toe the line with American dictates, and Russia says, hey, you European countries continue to do this, we're going to hit you. As long as America says she's not being hit direct, even if that were to occur, America is not being hit direct. But with this flotilla that are armed to the teeth with hypersonic missiles, this can touch home because these missiles travel at 6,000 miles per mile, I think per 10 minutes or 20 minutes or something like this. So they can strike anywhere in the U.S. in a blink of an eye. And even though the Cuban foreign ministry says they're not armed with nuclear weapons, you don't know what they're armed with. That could just be a ploy, just like when America simulated these nuclear strike on Kaliningrad and said that the bombers were not armed with nuclear weapons, but then you had conflicting reports saying that they were armed with nuclear weapons. Okay? So let's go into this article a little bit, and shout out to everybody that will join me and that is joining me now. I'll go in the chat in just a second. Matter of fact, let me go in the chat real quick. Net Rando Incognito, shout out, salute. Net Rando says, we all need to stand up straight with our heads up to fight for true civil society. Incognito says Russia has more subs along the coast, but these are hidden. Absolutely. Before I go further into this, do you know that Russia has some their new subs in the Gulf of Mexico for weeks? Listen to what I'm saying to you all. It seems like we're about to go off. Hold on 1 second, everybody. Give me 1 second. These guys won't stop. Hold on 1 second, okay? I'm gonna mute this. I'm gonna play a clip. Give me a second. If I get knocked off, do not go anywhere. All right? These people will not stop. Let me see. Let me find a 5-minute or a 6-minute clip, and I'm going to interrupt the clip once I try to stop this thing. It's telling me that it's about to cut off my links. So hold on. Man, these people suck. Hold on 1 second, everybody.
Like that.
Sure. Well, you know what's confusing here, Harley Schlanger, is that we've heard about de-dollarization, for example, for quite some time. And you hear the news every so often. But in the past month, there's been a barrage of, like a tidal wave, I could say, of news when it comes to surrounding the dollar. You know, you mentioned some. I mean, there's the Chinese president's visit to Saudi Arabia, where he had a meeting with the GCC group of Persian Gulf countries. And in that forum, he said that, you know, he wants money to be paid in the yuan. Now, I'm not too sure how far that's gone, but, you know, the BRICS Bank is looking for a common currency. You're looking at...
back to that, but I got it situated. They were going to kick me off the air. I'm serious. I just got on air. I've been on air for 14 minutes. What have I said that was so egregious? I'm asking. What the have I said that was so egregious to kick me off the air? Man, these people are crazy. But anyway, but you see this happen live on the air. So that you know that I'm not making any of this stuff up. But let's go to something. And we may come back to that clip, because that's a timed clip there, and I didn't even know it. I just clicked on it to try to buy time to try to stop this thing from cutting me off. But anyway, Russia now has nuclear capable weaponry in the West. And remember, some of Russia's submarines carry up to 160 to 200 nuclear warheads, enough to decimate half of the United States or most of the United States. You know, one submarine. The same as with the United States when it carries that amount of missiles. So, and Russia has more powerful, their nuclear weapons are a little bit more powerful than the United States. So that's something to think about. So let me go back to something that was said in the chat, okay? Because Joel Bradford is in the building. Shout out. We will be streaming live tomorrow. Saturday we'll be doing either tomorrow or Saturday. I have to look at the itinerary. My son will be setting it up on Patreon, and then one day this week we'll be streaming on channel members if they're allowed. A Canadian dumb elf Canuck. I'm sorry if I messed that up. Okay. Shout out. Thank you. Listen. So let's Incognito made a point. He says Russia has more subs along the coast, but these are hidden. Again, they had I think it was one or two of their quietest submarines in the Gulf of Mexico, and this is what freaked the United States out. They did not know that they were there. I think they were there for 2 weeks or something. Hold on 1 second. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Give me 1 second. Hold on. I know I have it saved. I know I have it saved, but I'm trying to see if I can pull it up here. Detections. Let's see. A few years, it says that the Russian subs, they sailed it was more than one, and they were in the Gulf of Mexico, and they went undetected weeks. They were just there. And they were probing U.S. defenses. They were collecting intelligence and all kind of electronic data. And then the Russians, when the Russian submarines left, after they got out of the Gulf of Mexico, they did this on purpose. I believe they submerged, they reemerged to the top of the water for U.S. satellites to pick them up, to let them know that. And it kept them guessing. Were they in the Gulf of Mexico? Were they not in the Gulf of Mexico? And Russia laughed about it because they had done what they were supposed to do, and this freaked the U.S. out. Okay, so right now in this area, this is freaking the U.S. out. See, as I told you, as long as the North Atlantic Terrorist Organization, under the auspices of Imperial America and U.S. and the UK, because remember, the UK still is a top dog, even though militarily she is not, but she intertwined herself with the United States, her daughter, to maintain position and power and influence. All right, and so these two, they will go at any lengths to try to maintain their power, their sway, and their control over everything. And it freaked them out in such a way that they are still trying to figure out the ins and outs of how Russia escaped all of this so-called technologically advanced surveillance equipment when the Russian subs were in there. Now, here's the kicker, that Russia has moved warships to Cuba, even temporarily for a few days or whatever. This is a no-no with America, because America feels as though the Western Hemisphere is her backyard, her front yard, her backyard. The Monroe Doctrine, you know, I rule the Western Hemisphere. No one can do anything outside of my approval without me. Now, I can go into the Eastern Hemisphere and cause all kind of havoc and hell and everything else, but I'm the exceptional nation, so if you buck up against it, then you are the aggressor. That's how they frame everything, right? So they are really pitching a fit now that the Russians had the gall, the nerves to do such a thing. And some people say, well, this was planned in advance. Really? Really? I was listening to Colonel, what is his name? Oh my God, I listened to him a lot. He was the chief of staff of Colin Powell. And he was talking about how this was actually a message that Russia was conveying to the United States, because America has no defenses, absolutely none, against not only Russia's hypersonic missiles, but they have no defense against the supersonic missiles either. America uses subsonic missiles, her cruise missiles. Russia has supersonic and hypersonic missiles, okay? This was a message, he said. And as he was talking, he said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, this is signifying the end of American global dominance and the end of American exceptionalism and Western hegemony worldwide. Because remember, I want you to think about this. I'll bring this up, and this is a crucial point, that America, hold on, Incognito says, breaking news, U.S. sends Los Angeles class fast attack submarine to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Are you serious, or are you just playing? Incognito, are you serious, or are you just playing? Anyway, as I was saying, we were almost on the threshold of World War III with the Cuba incident against Russia, America and the Soviet Union, remember? And the world had believed, because of America's media dominance, that it was all because Russia had stationed missiles capable of striking the United States. They believed that. They didn't understand that America was the drive behind all of that. What Russia did was a response to what America did. You never hear that in the history book. America had deployed, I think it's called Persings 2 missiles. Incognito says serious off Hal Turner. Okay, off Hal Turner, he gives some good news. Been out for most of the day. Okay, I've been ripping and running, and I just jumped in just to do this stream, so I missed that. But thank you for putting that out there. So the United States had deployed Persings to Germany, to Turkey, and to, I think it was one more place in Europe. And these missiles, these cruise missiles, were nuclear armed, and they were capable of reaching Russia or the Soviet Union within minutes. And this was the reason why the Soviet Union placed nuclear missiles in Cuba. But you don't get much of that in the history books. So that almost brought us to World War III, because America said that was an unacceptable threat. I want you to think about the mind of the exceptionalists, the mind of America, the mind of the UK, the mind of the terrorist organization called NATO. It is an unacceptable threat for Russia to respond to an unacceptable threat to Russia. I'm going to say that again. In the mind of the exceptionalists, there is an unacceptable threat when Russia responds to an unacceptable threat by the exceptionalists. Isn't that like out here in the ether zone mentally? So long as I can threaten your civilization, and so long as I can threaten your military power, as long as I can threaten your people, your economy, right? Your friendship with other nations, your alliances, as long as I'm able to do that, then this is what you say in the news. Every nation has the right to choose. You can't dictate what a nation can do. Every nation is entitled to sovereignty and peace. And then when Russia does it, that's an unacceptable threat. If they don't remove that unacceptable threat, we'll go to nuclear war. So it's okay for the unacceptable threat to threaten me. It's okay for the unacceptable threat to threaten Africa and Latin America and parts of Europe. As a matter of fact, all of Europe, because Europe would have been decimated. It's okay for your unacceptable threat to threaten Eurasia and Asia proper and West Asia. That's okay. But when a response is made to your unacceptable threat, it then becomes an unacceptable threat that we responded to your unacceptable threat. That is absolutely a lunatic way of thinking. That's what lunatics think. I can threaten you, but how dare you respond? I want you to think about this for 1 minute. Forget that you're from Canada. Forget that you're from the United States. Forget that you're from the Western world. If you're from the Western world, let's look at this for real, okay? Let's remove that. And let's just look at this like this. Why is it that Russia is belligerent when America lies some 8,000 to 10,000 miles away from our shore? And America is putting military bases, in Ukraine, putting military bases in Moldova, in Romania, in Bulgaria, in this nation, in that nation. But that's legitimate in the Nordic nations. She's putting military bases, missiles, air defense systems, all of this stuff, opening up, using military bases of those nations and opening up other bases there. And that's okay. But if Russia visits Venezuela, if Iran visits Venezuela, if China visits Venezuela, we've got to watch them because they may be up to some and whatever. We will not allow anybody to set up a military threat in our hemisphere. Do you not see this insanity of this? How? And this is why the world, listen, most people don't understand this. This is why the world is really and I'm in the room right where we're doing the renovation there. So it's hot up in here a little bit. So you got to deal with it. And I got these two bright lights right in my face. Think about this. What gives America the right to think that she can set military bases up on other people's borders, and that's okay? And there's not a response. Now, let me tell you this. Some of this stuff is brought on by Russia's negligence. When you say something to a person, when you speak it to a person, mean what you say and say what you mean. When Russia says, listen, this is an unacceptable threat. If you supply these weapons to Ukraine and they strike us, we will strike outside of Ukraine. They should mean it. There is no way on earth, and I'm not advocating war. I'm advocating motions that will prevent war. It may have a little scrimmages after my response, but this would pretty much kill and dead that thought of war. As soon as the missile strikes my territory, I'll strike a NATO territory. Me. I'll say and then when they start screaming, I'll say, well, the missile, it was an errant missile. Well, you have to, this, you know how they get into a fraud. I say, well, listen, let's be honest. You had nothing to say about them striking our territory. So you're going to have to deal with it. And if some more errant missiles hit your territory, remember, it's because of you supplying weapons to them. And we're responding to them. And sometimes missiles, artillery, and other things are errant. They go errant. They don't hit the targets. They hit outside their target. So I want you to remember that as you continue to supply these weapons that kill my citizens and my troops. That's what I would say. And then I would tell them, if from this point on, see, you mean what you say and say what you, if you escalate, this cannot be confined to the borders of Ukraine anymore. We have been trying to talk rationally with you all since the collapse of the Soviet Union. We have been trying to negotiate with you all since the collapse of the Soviet Union. We have been trying to be your friends, your allies, and your compatriots since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And at every turn, you spit in our face. And at every turn, your policies were highly provocative to us and ignoring our national interests and the interests, not only when it comes to in the military, but in the economic sphere. So from this point on, every action will be met with double the reaction. Double. If you take that as a threat and you escalate, remember, for every escalation, I'm going to meet you with a double escalation. If that means that we got to escalate this to war, then it has to be. Because listen, I hate what a lot of these pundits are doing. And I know they're doing it because they're trying to prevent war, but they're doing it wrong. They're doing it wrong. I mean, practically all of them. They're putting the onus on Russia not to respond. They're putting the onus on China not to respond. On Iran not to respond. I want you to think about this, okay? As I'm talking about these issues. When Israel committed that egregious act of war against Iran, the US, the UK, and Europe sanctioned Iran for retaliating. They didn't sanction Israel for committing an act of war by not only killing 2 or 3 top generals and a couple colonels and their children in a consulate connected to the embassy, which is considered sovereign territory of that nation. And according to international law, an attack on the consulate or the embassy is a direct act of war. You understand? Iran was sanctioned for its response to a direct act of war by Israel. This is lunatic politics. Do you understand me? Do you believe that something like this can go on in perpetuity? It cannot go on in perpetuity. You cannot skirt the laws. You cannot have double standards. It cannot be hypocrisy. It cannot be any of this stuff that the West has become accustomed to, because they have been the rulers and the power brokers for centuries. That's why the entire thing is falling down. Because for something to last, it must have a foundation of justice, of freedom, of equality. And we see that there is no justice. If there was, there were 30-some thousand, close to 40,000 people killed in Gaza. Those are war crimes. Those are, as a matter of fact, the UN said it. Those are war crimes, crimes against humanity. Why isn't Bibi and his whole cabinet in The Hague? They did not hesitate to go into Liberia and arrest, what's his name? I forget his name. He was a U.S. He worked with the U.S. And when he crossed the U.S.'s toes, they did not hesitate to go in there and arrest him. An African. And yet Bibi is still out. His cabinet, his war cabinet is still out. Look at what they did to Slobodan Milosevic of Yugoslavia after the United States and NATO bombed Yugoslavia and broke it up into several states because the United States was with a plan to weaken Russia. Most people don't understand this. Yugoslavia was strategic. The bombing of Yugoslavia was strategic. If you look at the wars after the fall of the Soviet Union, all of the wars that were initiated, go back and look and you'll see if I'm telling you a lot. Most people don't analyze it. They look at it from right there, like when people talk about, oh, Israel has the right to defend itself from October 7th. And they don't see all of the days and years prior to October 7th, which led up to October 7th. And they don't understand and they don't recognize and they push aside the international law when it says any people or nation that is under occupation has the inherent right to armed resistance. That's an international law. They ignore that. And then they say Israel has the right to respond. How in the hell is that? You're nullifying the very laws that you put on the chart. Everybody knows that is occupied Palestine. Everybody knows that that's occupied Gaza. So according to international law, any people or nation under occupation has the right, the inherent, it says inherent, right to armed resistance. So whatsoever they do, they are justified in it because they're under occupation, according to international law. Well, it was heinous what Hamas did. Well, what has Israel been doing for the past 40 years? How can you compare a people that are fighting for their independence, their land, and their history to a people who came and subjugated them and took their land and their history and then subjected them, made them beggars and squatters? How in the hell can you compare the two? I don't care if you are pro-Israeli or anti-Palestinian or whatever, go into international law right now. Pull it up and tell me if I'm lying. Tell me if I'm lying. If international law does not give any occupied people or nation the inherent right for armed resistance. And if that is the case, and if that is international law, what Palestine did is justified under international law. I don't care about all of this wrangling and this double talk, double speaking, everything. It's right there in the books. Show me where I'm wrong. That's all I ask. And you have all of these international lawyers. They dance around this because they don't want the ire of the Jewish elite or the Western world to come down on them. I care two flips about it. Because right is right and wrong is wrong. And none of them are God. So they don't strike a bit of fear in me. I fear God, not them. You understand? Charles Taylor, Ned Rando, Charles Taylor. That's his name. Let me highlight that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Charles Taylor, Ned Rando. Shout out to Ned Rando. They went into Liberia and arrested the sitting president of Liberia, Charles. He crossed the U.S. when he would not do what the U.S. asked him to do a couple times in a row. They went in, they trumped up charges on him, they arrested him and took him to The Hague. Why didn't they do that to Bibi and his crew? Huh? Look again, back to Slobodan Milosevic. There was some strife going on, and not a lot. It was, there was war. I mean, there was ethnic strife and religious strife. Not like the West portrays it, but I'm not getting into all of that right now. We can talk about all of that in another episode. But what gave NATO the right to go in and bomb and try to solve the problems that the government is supposed to solve? And once they did it, they balkanized the nation. And then they put him in jail, Slobodan Milosevic, the sitting president of Yugoslavia. And then they killed him. Listen to what they did. They killed him and said he died from a heart attack. They killed him and said he died from a heart attack. It's crazy. So, again, let's go back to something. All of these wars that has transpired since the fall of the Soviet Union have been strategic. America went into Iraq. Who was Iraq finally allied to? Talk to me. Talk to me. Russia, right? First, Saddam was on the U.S. side. He was their man, and when he switched sides to Russia, that was unacceptable. Libya. Who was a major purchaser of Russian arms and a trade partner to Russia? Libya. Look at Syria. What's going on in Syria? Syria is the longest standing friendship that Russia has in the Middle East. 1/3 of it is under occupation by the United States. Look at Lebanon. To get Syria like this, guess what happened? The U.S. emboldened Rafik Hariri, the billionaire who held most of his assets in the West, I might add. And then when they got him to a point where he was putting pressure on the Lebanese and on the Syrian authorities, because at that time Syria had military forces and bases in Lebanon, and they were keeping Israel at bay because Israel couldn't fly over Lebanon. Israel couldn't fly into Syria and bomb Syria. They couldn't launch missiles from over Lebanese airspace into Syria. The Syrian Arab army would have hit back very hard, and Israel knew it. So Israel put pressure on the United States, and guess what they did? They assassinated their boy, Rafik Hariri. And then the United States, the UK, and the rest of NATO put this propaganda campaign to push the Syrian armed forces out of Lebanon. Once they were forced to push out, look what happened. The so-called civil war, which the United States and Great Britain instigated in Syria, the civil strife and uprising in Lebanon, and look what happened to Israel. Israel then had a free hand to fly its warplanes over Lebanese airspace, strike Syria from Lebanese airspace, and then fly into Syrian airspace. All of this stuff is strategic to weaken Russia. That was the only base outside of the former Soviet Republic that Russia had. That Tartus or what is it? The Tartus was a maintenance area, and the it's slipping my mind at this moment. Latakia, a lot of Kia, or however they say it, those were the only Russian military bases outside of the former Soviet Union, because the Russian pulled back from Cuba. And if they balkanized and broke up Syria or overthrew Assad, they could put their people in power, who would have demanded the removal of the naval facilities. It was the only warm water port that Russia had outside in the Mediterranean area. And this would have pushed Russia, and they had plans. Go Google this stuff. They had plans to push Russia back into the Black Sea. And remember, Turkey being the flank nation on the Black, Turkey has control of the strait. So Russia would have been confined to the Black Sea as a naval force. And then with the United States causing an upheaval in Georgia, Russia would have had to deal with that fire. And then the overthrow, and then the taking over of Ukraine would have forced the Russian Black Sea fleet out of the bases in Crimea, which means that NATO would have reduced Russia's naval capacity to zilch, and Russia would have been reduced to less than a regional power. All of these wars were to beat Russia down. Guess why? Because they wanted to focus on China and Iran. They wanted to break Iran so that they can control the mineral resources in West Asia or the Middle East and North Africa. And they can keep the petrodollar going because they would have the resources. You understand? All of this can be studied or found out just with a little research. And then they could have focused their sights on controlling China, just like they thought they did, because they did it with Japan. Remember, Japan was the second largest economy in the world. Remember that? And remember, in the 80s, some of you may not be old enough for that. So, but in the 80s, Japan, everything that you looked around was coming out of Japan. TVs, everything, right? They were the manufacturing super juggernauts. And the United States wanted to control Japan. And as Japan's economy heated up even more, the United States saw it as a threat, and they sabotaged the Japanese economy. Friends like this, huh? Friends like that. They sabotaged the Japanese economy, collapsing the Japanese economy. And hence China comes in. And they thought that they could do the same thing to China. But here's the difference. China is not under U.S. occupation. Japan is. Let me say that again. They thought that they could do the same thing to China, use China as a manufacturing house to recycle all of the dollars that they made back into the West or the U.S. to keep the dollar as the main thing. And they could control China. This is why they have all of those bases around there. They want a hem chain between the first and the second island chain to prevent China's military and economic breakout capacity. Someone told me that long ago. And they said that the Chinese knew what the United States were trying to do. And they were making preparations to deal with this in the long run. And now look where we are right now. The United States sees China as the greatest threat, not just because China has the largest navy and the largest army and will have the largest air force by the end of this year or next year. It is because China has the largest economy and purchasing power parity. And if China has the military to rebuff the U.S. and has the economic capacity to say, bring it on with your sanctions. As a matter of fact, China says as much today. They say we will not go along with these illegal sanctions against Russia, these secondary sanctions. You're trying to keep everybody under your jurisdiction. That's what they do. The United States gets pissed with somebody. They get mad with somebody. They sanction them, and then they want you to join in. And if you don't join in, they sanction you. Hey, that's your beef. I'm not in that. I'm cool with China. I'm going to continue to do what's best for my people and my nation. And how in the hell can you sanction me when I'm not the 51st state? I'm not the 52nd state. I'm not under U.S. law jurisdiction. See, these extra jurisdictional sanctions is what's alienating America. She gets in her feelings and gets butthurt, and then she demands that everybody falls in line with what she's doing, even though it's detrimental to her own well-being. These people are absolute lunatics. You know what I mean? What is it? Oh, Net Rando, that's right. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Net Rando, absolutely. Down there, he says they are trying to Milosevic, Julian Assange. Milosevic was acquitted at the TFRI. Yeah, he sure was. But check this out. Net Rando says something extra that most of y'all need to hear here. And I'm going to put this up on the screen. So that when they start talking about him being a dictator, look at this. Saddam Hussein got the key to the city in Detroit. Oh my God. And Kabuta says Putin visit to North Korea would be interesting. Listen, it's well overdue. I've been saying that China had been, even though China had abided by some of the sanctions against North Korea, China wasn't really abiding. I don't care what they say. They share a border. You know China was putting goods and technology across the border. That's a lifelong friend. They are bound by treaty to come to each other's aid in the event of a war. North Korea and China. This is an age-old treaty. You say, well, China wouldn't do it. That's what the Americans were saying when the Korean War was going on. And then when they thought they beat back the Koreans, they looked up and saw a mountain, nothing but Chinese coming over. That's it. So nobody want to address these issues. I've said this for the longest. If that's your beef with them, I'm not going to join in, especially when it's detrimental to my economics and my positioning and my friendship with them. If you got a problem with my friend, you deal with it. But I'm going to still be a friend to that friend. And if you don't want us trading in your dollar, cool. We'll trade in our currency. Or we'll do barter trades. Because I think it's too much. Listen, Russia has waited too long to do this. I've been saying this. I'm going to tell you who else was an advocate of this. the late Muammar Gaddafi and the late and great Robert Mugabe. He had been saying that for the longest, to get out of the dollar, to do bilateral trades with each other. He says that the dollar, they would use the dollar to strangle your economies and your independence as a nation. Trade with each other. Forget what the U.S. says. When the U.S. trades with anybody, does she care that you have a beef with them? Show you how arrogant and how hypocritical she is. The Kurds in northern Syria. Turkey has classified them as terrorist groups. The ones in northern Iraq, they've been classified as terrorist groups, right? Even some European nations have them on the list as terrorist groups. Who's arming the Kurds in Iraq and Syria? Who's supplying them with money? Who's trading the oil that the Kurds steal from the Syrian people? Who's ignoring their NATO treaty ally? It's America. She doesn't care that Erdogan and the Turkey, now it is called Turkey, Turkey is saying, listen, we got them under sanctions. America say, the hell with your sanctions. We need them to weaken Assad. We need them to keep chaos going in Syria, and we need them to keep chaos going in Iran and in Iraq. To hell with your sanctions. So why shouldn't you do the same to her? Huh? You got to give it back as good as she gives it out. You understand? Let's go a little further. It says, Incognito says, and I'm going to go back to that North Korea in just a second. Incognito says, U.S. plunders the world, but none of the plunder trickles down to the American peasants like me too. But when we're talking about Putin and North Korea, again, let's go back to something. It's been long overdue. As America continued to arm all these people and cause overthrows of governments, why didn't Russia respond? Russia was taking a high road. Sometimes in war, you got to get in the mud. When a person is waging war, it doesn't have to be a shoot 'em up war. If they're waging an economic war on you, a political war on you, a geopolitical war on you, outside of the military on you, to defend yourself, you've got to do the same. You've got to give it back as good as she gives it to you. If she did it to your allies, do it to her allies. If she's arming people to hurt you, arm people to give her something. And I guarantee you, I won't cry uncle first. And now Russia has come to that conclusion. Well, let me give such a man, to hell with that. Arm them all. I'll have it where you couldn't even fly a helicopter in the region. If you want to act that way, I'll have it where you couldn't even drive a truck down the road. I'll say, listen, all is fair and love and war now. I've asked you to stop. This is not me asking you since 2014. I've been talking to you. We've been talking to you since the collapse of the Soviet Union. And you continue to ignore this. And you continue to do this, this, and this. So since you fed us with this, we're going to give you a buffet of it too. Now eat of it. See, I'm a different type of person. I'm sorry. And this is how I am. I can be your best friend. And I also can be the person that you have nightmares about. Because I'm going to treat a person the way they treat me. I'm going to treat a person the way I want them to treat me. And according to the book, do unto others as you would have them to do unto you, right? Well, America keep doing unto others, so now it's time for the others to do unto her. That's only right. That's justice. Right? Or we translate the word justice into Greek. That's Jesus, right? That's what you want, right? You want Jesus. I'm going to give you Jesus. Every time you send out a missile, I'm going to send one back. Every time you bomb a city, it will be bombed right back. And that way we can alleviate war. Because you'll see that if I'm hurt, if I got a scratch, you got two. If I got a bloody nose, you got two black eyes. This is how you deal with people. This is how you deal with bullies. When you're straight up with them, they know what lines not to cross. If you continue to say one thing and do another, they'll start ignoring your red lines. And they'll do what they feel because they don't feel escalation is on the thing. They feel like, oh, this person is just, they can hurt me, but they're so passive. I'm not even worried about that. Yeah. But now you're threatening my family. You're threatening my livelihood. You're threatening my nation. I have to do something. I have to. If I don't, I'm not worth anything. To my children, to my mother, to my wife, to my brothers, to my sisters, to my nation. So I'm going to give you everything that you gave back. Because when I say I'm going to give them Jesus, the word Jesus means justice. So when you give it to me, expect Jesus in return. I'm going to give you all of it, and I hope you love him, because I'm going to give it all to you. But you're not going to have no... Again, I continue to tell you, I'm not from the Tootsie Roll Lollipop Company. You don't get free licks here. If you give them out, I'm going to give them back to you in return. I'll try to be civil with you, talk to you, reason with you, but when reason is out of the question and you continue to threaten my livelihood and my national security, then guess what I have to do? I have to defend it at all costs. This is the very rule, the first rule when you come into creation. That's the first law. Self-preservation is the first law of nature. And if you don't implement that law, your life and your loved ones' lives aren't worth anything. See, they made people sissies. Made people scared to say this stuff because they're scared to get banned. But I'm not advocating war. I'm not advocating violence. I'm saying, listen, to avoid war, I might have to stand up and pop you in the nose. If you keep talking reckless to me. If you keep acting reckless to me, I might have to kick you in your groin. And that'll calm you down and say, hey, maybe I picked on the wrong person. Let me reevaluate the situation that I'm in right now. Because if you don't reevaluate it and we go head to head, man, we got to go all out. It's a no hold bar then. That's how it is. You know, I was in jiu-jitsu one day, right? My kids will tell you this. They tell me, they say, Dad, you're so stubborn when you come. So we had just got back from teaching a class, because we do, and this goes what I'm saying. We had just got back from teaching a class at Nabar Combat. And I think Nabar Combat is the best martial arts ever. But anyway, we was teaching a class at Nabar. I think I had, the day before that, I had just got done doing my Taekwondo, I believe. So that day, we were at Nabar all day from about 4 in the morning to about 6 in the evening, something like that, because we had a lot to do there. And we went to jiu-jitsu and judo, MMA. We went to MMA, and we were in a training. And we were doing some little small tournaments. And in the middle of the tournament, one guy, it's like he had a beef with me for no reason. And he was talking a lot of, stuff. And so he and I just got matched up. And we were going, I was throwing him like a rag doll. But check it. So we got down and I'm about to put an omoplata on him. Well, I'm gonna stop with that because most people don't know what it is. So I'm positioning myself. I'm in side control, and then as I was reaching, I said, "No, I can get a choke on him real quick." I'm saying to myself, "I can get this choke on him." And as I reached down, my pinky finger got caught in the mat, snapped back, and they were saying, "Hey, we're gonna have to call the match and give it to him on the technique." And I was like, "I don't get a couple minutes to recuperate." They said, "Well, you won't be able to recuperate. Your pinky finger is broken." I said, "Listen," because the guy was talking so much smack. I said, "Listen, give me about 2 minutes. That's all." And my finger is like swollen. It's like all the way back here. I still got pictures of it, and it was like big as a sausage. I said, "Give me a second." They said, "You're not going to be able to return." So I go up against the wall. My daughter and my son will tell you. So I go up against the wall. They're like, "Dad, what you going to do?" I said, "Don't worry about this." I get up against the wall. I turn my head. Pow! Snap my finger back into place. Snap it back in. And it's throbbing. And they're like, "We're about to call the match." I said, "No, you're not. We're about to get this." Went in and the moral of the story, went back in and submitted it. Because he was talking so much garbage. That's what the West is doing. So Russia has to go in there. They have to tell them, "Hold on a second, pop that finger back in place, and then get back in there and give it as good as they can get it." That's what has to happen. That's what has to happen. Seriously. So if she does not do this, the empire is going to continue to escalate. They're looking for a way out. That's why they're publishing these articles. Let me see that I just went from. Let's see. Will it go back to it? Hold on one second. Yeah, that's why they're publishing these articles. NATO top job favorite says dialogue needed with Russia. Why? You didn't say that 10 weeks ago. You're saying that because you're getting your behind handed to you. But when this thing escalates out of Ukraine into Russia, why should it be just resigned to Russia? Huh? Russia is trying to stop the war. They've asked for negotiations at every turn, even as they were winning and as they are winning. So why should I lose my citizens? I'm the leader of Russia. They're attacking Belgorod and the cities on the periphery and the surrounding areas of Ukraine with weapons that Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, what is their name? Victoria Nuland, and all of the other ones have been advocating for them to use in Russia. That's not a direct act of war. What is? So if you're hitting me and you're constantly bombarding me and you're putting my family's lives at stake, what should I do? Just sit there and take it? Or try to talk this thing out? We'll talk it out when I smack you in your face again. Because you smacked me in mine, now I got to smack you in yours. Twice as hard. And I'm not talking about in Ukraine. Hit one of those military bases that are housed in the F-16. Hit one of those military bases that are housing all of those air defense systems that they continue to send into Ukraine. Hit one of them that are that have the mercenaries right before they're getting ready to be transferred. Interdiction. Have you ever heard of interdiction? Matter of fact, let's go to something. Let's go to something real quick. All right. According to the dictionary, all right, the word interdiction. Oh, man, these people are crazy. They put North America. I'm not talking about North America. I said interdiction. They put something else in there. All right. All right. Let's go to Merriam-Webster dictionary. These people crazy as on the way. I guess Google is saying we're not going to let you get these definitions to cut us up like a Ginsu knife. Well, listen. What in the world is happening? Listen, what? According to Merriam-Webster's dictionary, on Merriam-Webster.com, they just changed. You're not going to believe this. They just changed this from interdiction to, let me see if I can put this up here. From interdiction to intercept. These people, you suck. Hold on one second, everybody. Hold on one second. I guess I'm giving it to them a little bit too hard. The word interdict is the root word of interdiction. All right, it's a verb. It means to lay under or prohibit by an act, by an interdict, to forbid in an unusual, formal, or authoritative manner. Right, to destroy, to damage, or to cut off something, such as. Listen to this part. Now, I didn't know this. I just did this live on air. The third definition says this: to destroy, damage, or cut off something, such as an enemy line of supply, by firepower to stop or hamper an enemy. Bam. Mic drop moment. If you're telling me that you're going to keep sending this in here to kill my troops and they're using this against my land property, then I'm going to interdict it. Wherever my intelligence telling me that the bases are housing them, I'm hitting them. When NATO gets their panties in a crawl and starts screaming, I'll say stop supplying the weapons. Then we'll stop interdicting. But as long as you continue to do this, this is not going to be a one-sided thing. I'm not going to allow you to bring this into Ukraine. But Russia, they're trying to avoid war by allowing this to happen. People say, well, they're allowing it to get in there so they can destroy it. They can destroy it at the interdiction points. Oh, well, they just want to destroy as much NATO weapons as they can. Can't you destroy more NATO weapons by hitting the NATO facilities that have them in there? and at the same time send a point to NATO? Because NATO can't go to war with Russia at this moment. Everybody understands that NATO does not have the armament, the artillery, or the military capability to do it. They were just saying that Europe doesn't even have 5% of the air defense needed to defend against an onslaught by Russia. There was writings that said, and this was prior to the Ukrainian conflict, that Russia would overrun NATO in Europe in less than 72 hours. If you think I'm lying, Google it. Google it right now. This was prior to that. You can sometimes be so careful until you make the biggest mistakes. And I think Russia's doing it. They're trying to be too careful. They need to listen to that song, Who Let the Dogs Out? And let those dogs out. Because America continues to let the dogs of war run. They got to let their dogs out too. Maybe this will prevent war. It'll cause a skirmish, but it's better than nuclear conflagration, right? But we know nuclear war is coming to Europe now. There's no getting around that. So let me go to the chat real quick before we come to a close on our show. Also, shout out to somebody just jumped in the chat. Man, my thing is just messing up. Solar Bear, shout out. Net Randall say justice was originally mercy for the unfortunate, and that's why the unfortunate always talk about Jesus, because they want justice, you know. And the word Jesus is justice is Greek. Remember, Jesus was not Greek, right? So his name was Isa or Issa. But anyway, let's go further. Let's see. Incognito says, like Dave Chappelle said. Let me put this up here. Like Dave Chappelle says, sometimes you just have to kick them in. Yeah, hey, that was funny as I don't know what, that episode. Well, all of it, yeah, that was funny as I don't know what. I understand. Listen, Dumb Elf Canuck says, Lindsey Graham, you talking sissy boy Lindsey, right? The one that has never seen a war that he does not like, because the Israelis have something on him, so he has to push that. And he's corrupt as hell, and he continues to get all of this back money. And this man is willing to push for war. Now, there's nothing you can have on me that bad that'll make me want to push for nuclear war, you know, against a pure power like that. This guy's crazy as hell. But let's go further. But let me put this back up before I go back to incognito. Oh man. I got that way. This is incognito, but oh man. But that's hilarious there. But incognito says it's like the Blinken Newland crowd are trying to get the Christian nuclear nations to blow each other up like a suicidal death wife. But you know, it's crazy because they always talk about Islamic fanaticism, and they are the most fanatical people. Look at the policies. That's crazy, right? And listen, man, I tell you, we could go on this all night long. Hey, look for a show tomorrow. We got a show tomorrow. And also, we may do, I'm trying to figure out which days we're doing, but we're doing the Patreon and the channel members this week, regardless. I don't care. Even we have to pre-record them and air them. We're going to do them, okay? But I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth anywhere, bar none, on God green earth. This is your platform for education, elevation, and edification. This is the Red Pill Diaries, and I'm your brother, host, and friend, Rashid. And I love you all who love truth from the bottom of my heart to the depth of my soul, but know that the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that the true and living God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. And thank each and every one of you for joining me and giving me your time. I really appreciate it. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody, and Kabari. Gotcha. Peace. I'm out.